Story 1. The Mysterious Incident at the McDonald's. My name is Devon, and every summer, I embark on a cross-country road trip to reconnect with friends from my high school days. Despite moving away with my family just before senior year, I've managed to maintain close ties with my hometown pals. This particular summer, over 5 years since graduation, I found myself once again navigating the open roads, reminiscing about the memories and friendships that shaped my teenage years. The drive was long but familiar, a ritualistic journey that spanned 2 days with a mandatory overnight stop. In college, I often opted to sleep in my car to save money, but with a stable job now, I indulged in the luxury of a hotel room for this trip. As the sun began its descent on the horizon, I spotted a small town nestled alongside the highway. Its quaint charm beckoned me to pause and rest for the night. A solitary gas station and a brightly lit McDonald's punctuated the otherwise serene landscape, promising sustenance after hours of driving. Checking into a modest motel, I appreciated the simplicity of the accommodations. A clean bed and a hot shower were all I needed after a day behind the wheel. Once refreshed, hunger led me back into the town's quiet streets in search of dinner. Despite the tranquility, there was an eerie stillness in the air as I walked along the roadside towards the familiar golden arches. The McDonald's appeared closed despite its exterior lights casting a warm glow onto the empty parking lot. Peering through the glass, I noticed a lone figure behind the counter. Curiosity getting the better of me, I tugged at the door handle, finding it stubbornly resistant. A closer inspection with my phone's flashlight revealed the handles on the inside were secured together, possibly with duct tape. Before I could make sense of the peculiar sight, the figure vanished from view. Unease crept over me, prompting a swift retreat back to the safety of my motel room. Opting for snacks from the nearby gas station, I settled in for the night, the unnerving encounter at the McDonald's lingering in my thoughts. Morning broke with a sense of urgency to resume my journey. Passing by the McDonald's on the outskirts of town, I was met with a scene of chaos. The building lay in ruins, shattered glass glinting in the morning sun, while emergency responders worked tirelessly to secure the area. Shocked and perplexed, I dialed emergency services to recount what I had witnessed the previous night. Despite sharing my account with the authorities, my observations seemed to hold little significance in the unfolding investigation. Theories circulated among locals and friends alike, ranging from a botched robbery to an insurance scam gone awry. Each possibility only deepened the mystery surrounding the quiet town and its shattered McDonald's. In the days that followed, I found myself haunted by unanswered questions. What had transpired in that deserted McDonald's? Who was the mysterious figure I had glimpsed through the glass? Despite scouring local news outlets, updates on the incident remained sparse and inconclusive. Back home, I sought solace in reconnecting with old friends, sharing the bizarre tale of my overnight stay in the small town. Their reactions varied from disbelief to speculative theories of their own. One friend suggested it might have been a targeted attack on the franchise owner, while another mused about the possibility of foul play involving disgruntled employees. With time, the intensity of the event began to fade, relegated to a peculiar anecdote in the annals of my road trip adventures. Yet, the image of that shattered McDonald's and the enigmatic figure behind the counter lingered in my mind, a reminder of the fragility of routine and the unpredictability of the road. As the summer drew to a close, I reflected on the fleeting nature of our journeys, both physical and emotional. Each mile traveled had brought me closer to cherished memories and unexpected encounters. The small town with its quiet streets and shattered McDonald's had become a poignant chapter in my personal narrative, a reminder to embrace the unknown, even when it veers off course. In the end, the mystery of that summer night remains unsolved, a lingering enigma that continues to evoke curiosity and contemplation. Perhaps someday, the truth behind the quiet town and its shattered landmark will come to light, but until then, it remains a testament to the inexplicable twists of fate encountered along life's winding highways. Story 2. During my senior year of high school, I held a part-time job at McDonald's, a bustling franchise located in the heart of our city. Situated just a stone's throw away from my school, it was convenient yet presented its own set of challenges, especially with the late night shifts I often found myself working. I remember one particular Tuesday evening vividly. It was around 7 p.m. when I arrived for my shift. The day had been long, filled with lectures and after-school activities, but I was used to the routine. My co-worker Jill, a seasoned assistant manager in her late 20s, greeted me with her usual no-nonsense demeanor. She had been with McDonald's for years, and her experience showed in how she managed the team. The evening started off busy, as weekdays tended to be. Families, students, and professionals from nearby offices streamed in, eager for a quick meal or a place to unwind. By 10 p.m., however, the rush had subsided. The dining area, which earlier buzzed with conversations and the clatter of trays, now settled into a quieter rhythm. A few lingering customers occupied scattered tables, mostly absorbed in their phones or laptops, taking advantage of the restaurant's free Wi-Fi. For Jill and me, this signaled the beginning of the wind-down routine. We tidied up the dining area, wiped down the counters, and prepared for closing. Despite the late hour, there was a sense of efficiency between us, a silent understanding that we would finish on time, allowing me to get home before it was too late. Around 11:30 p.m., as I was wiping down the front counter, a middle-aged woman approached me with concern etched on her face. She mentioned something about a person slumped over in the far corner of the dining room, near the restroom. Jill overheard our conversation and joined me as we investigated the situation. Sure enough, seated at a table tucked away in a dimly lit corner, was a man. His head rested on folded arms, unmoving. Initially, I thought he might be a tired customer who had dozed off after a long day. It wasn't uncommon, especially during the quieter hours of the night. Jill and I exchanged a glance, silently debating our next course of action. As the assistant manager, Jill took charge, deciding it was best to check on the man before proceeding with our closing routine. We approached cautiously, aware that waking a sleeping person could sometimes lead to unpredictable reactions. "Excuse me, sir." Jill's voice was firm yet gentle as she leaned closer to the man. "We're closing soon. Are you all right?" There was no response, just the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Concerned now, I followed Jill's lead and tried to gently shake the man's shoulder. "Hey, sir, closing time," I added, hoping to elicit some reaction. Still, the man remained motionless, his face obscured by his arms. "It's like he's out cold," I murmured to Jill, who frowned slightly. She knew the protocol well. It was our responsibility to ensure the safety of everyone in the restaurant, customers included. "We'll give him a moment," Jill decided after a brief pause. "But we can't leave him like this if he doesn't respond soon." Nodding in agreement, I stood back, keeping an eye on the man while Jill returned to her duties behind the counter. We both knew the delicate balance between compassion and caution in situations like these. Minutes ticked by slowly. The last few customers gathered their belongings and left, leaving us alone with the still unresponsive man. It was nearing midnight, our designated closing time, and I began to feel a knot of unease in my stomach. Despite Jill's composed demeanor, I sensed her growing concern mirrored mine. I glanced over at Jill, who was on the phone, her expression focused. It didn't take long for me to realize she was calling the police. The man's continued unconsciousness was beginning to raise suspicions, and Jill wasn't one to take chances, especially in situations that could potentially escalate. Before I could fully grasp the seriousness of the situation, the man stirred. His movements were slow at first, as if emerging from a deep slumber. But then, to our astonishment and growing horror, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife. My heart raced as I stumbled backward, shock and fear coursing through me. Jill's sharp intake of breath echoed my own panic as we both retreated towards the safety of the counter. In moments like these, time seemed to stretch endlessly, each second filled with the palpable threat of danger. "He's got a knife," I exclaimed breathlessly, adrenaline surging through my veins. Jill's expression hardened into one of resolve as she swiftly assessed the situation. Her voice, steady despite the tension in the air, instructed me to follow her to the back of the restaurant. Together, we hurried towards the storage room located behind the kitchen, our footsteps echoing loudly in the empty restaurant. The storage room door swung shut behind us, and Jill quickly secured it, her fingers trembling slightly. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears as I tried to process the events unfolding around us. The dimly lit room offered little solace, its shelves stocked with supplies and equipment now serving as a stark reminder of our vulnerability. "We need to call the police again," Jill said, her voice urgent. "This time, it's an emergency." I nodded, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone. Dialing 911 felt like an eternity as I relayed our location and the unfolding crisis. The dispatcher assured us that officers were on their way, but every passing moment felt agonizingly long. Outside the storage room, we could hear the intruder, now clearly agitated, moving about the restaurant. The sound of crashing objects and muffled shouts sent shivers down my spine, each noise a grim reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the thin walls separating us. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as we huddled together in the cramped storage room, waiting for help to arrive. Jill kept her hand pressed against the door, as if by sheer willpower alone she could prevent the man from breaking through. I clung to my phone like a lifeline, desperate for any sign that help was imminent. Finally, the distant sound of approaching sirens pierced the tense silence. Relief washed over me as the noise grew louder, signaling the arrival of law enforcement. Jill and I exchanged a glance, our shared anxiety giving way to cautious hope. Help had arrived. The police wasted no time in neutralizing the threat. Voices echoed through the restaurant as orders were shouted and commands were obeyed. The intruder was subdued, his resistance futile against the trained officers who swiftly took control of the situation. Only when we heard the reassuring click of handcuffs did Jill and I dare to emerge from our temporary sanctuary. Stepping cautiously into the dimly lit dining area, we were met with a scene of chaos. Tables were overturned, chairs scattered haphazardly, and the remains of shattered dishes lay strewn across the floor. It was evident that the man's violent outburst had left its mark on the once orderly restaurant. I surveyed the damage with a mixture of disbelief and relief, my eyes settling on the scratched register screens, clear evidence of the man's reckless actions. It was a stark reminder of how quickly a seemingly routine evening could escalate into a terrifying ordeal. The police conducted their investigation while Jill and I provided our accounts of the events that had transpired. They confirmed our suspicions. The man was under the influence of drugs, his erratic behavior a dangerous consequence of substances that impaired his judgment and heightened his aggression. As the officers completed their initial assessment, Jill and I were finally able to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The immediate threat had been neutralized, and we were safe. Yet, the lingering sense of unease remained, a reminder of the fragility of security in an unpredictable world. After giving our statements and ensuring that the restaurant was secure, Jill and I finally left for the night. The drive home felt surreal, the events of the evening replaying in my mind like a scene from a suspense thriller. When I arrived home, my father was still awake, his concern evident as he greeted me in the living room. We sat together in the quiet of our home, the familiar surroundings offering a comforting contrast to the chaos I had just experienced. My father listened intently as I recounted the events of the night, his presence a source of reassurance in the aftermath of such a harrowing ordeal. "If you want to quit, I won't blame you," my father said quietly, his concern for my safety evident in his eyes. I considered his words carefully, reflecting on the fear and uncertainty that had gripped me only hours earlier. But despite the lingering unease, I found myself hesitating to walk away. Working at McDonald's had been more than just a job. It had taught me responsibility, resilience, and the importance of remaining calm under pressure. In the days that followed, the incident at McDonald's remained a topic of conversation among friends and family. News of the altercation spread through our community, sparking discussions about safety and the risks faced by those who worked late-night shifts. Despite the trauma of that night, I returned to work at McDonald's, determined not to let fear dictate my decisions. The scratched register screens served as a constant reminder of the vulnerability that lurked beneath the surface of everyday routines. Over time, the restaurant resumed its usual rhythm, and life gradually returned to normal. Jill and I continued to work together, our bond strengthened by the shared experience of surviving a dangerous encounter. The incident became a defining moment in my final year of high school, a lesson in resilience and the unpredictability of human behavior. Looking back now, I realize how that night shaped my perspective on safety, responsibility, and the importance of remaining vigilant in uncertain situations. It was a sobering reminder of the risks inherent in customer service jobs, where interactions with strangers could quickly escalate into moments of peril. As I eventually moved on to college and pursued new opportunities, the memories of that night at McDonald's remained with me. It was a chapter in my life that had tested my courage and resilience, leaving an indelible mark on my journey towards adulthood. Story 3. It was about 5 years ago, a time that now feels like a distant echo of normalcy before the world descended into chaos. Back then, I was still living in the heart of a bustling city, sharing an apartment with my good friend Andrew. Life had a rhythm to it. I was 23, balancing freelance graphic design gigs with driving for Uber on the side. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it paid the bills and allowed me to enjoy the occasional night out with friends who were still in college. One Thursday night, after a particularly late outing with the guys that spilled over midnight, I found myself craving a late-night bite. McDonald's was just a few blocks from our usual haunts, so I veered off alone while the others headed home. Stepping into the familiar glow of fluorescent lights, I immediately sensed an air of tension. A man, not much older than myself, was engaged in a heated argument with one of the cashiers. His voice echoed through the empty restaurant, his frustration palpable. I hesitated near the entrance, keeping a safe distance. It wasn't uncommon to encounter odd characters in these late-night joints, but something about this situation felt different. The man seemed out of place, agitated beyond reason. The cashier, visibly shaken but composed, tried to defuse the situation. I wasn't sure what had sparked the argument, perhaps a simple mix-up in an order, a common occurrence in these late hours. As the standoff continued, I found myself among a handful of patrons who had quietly become spectators. We stood at a distance, unsure whether to intervene or merely observe. Minutes stretched into eternity as the tension escalated. Suddenly, without warning, the man vaulted over the counter, lunging at the cashier. It happened so swiftly that my brain struggled to process the scene unfolding before me. The cashier, caught off guard but instinctively defensive, struggled with the assailant out of my line of sight behind the counter. I should have acted, intervened somehow, but fear rooted me in place. I watched, helpless and stunned, as the struggle continued, muffled sounds of scuffling and shouts barely audible over the restaurant's hum. Then, the chilling realization struck. Amidst the chaos, the man emerged brandishing a gun. Panic seized my chest as I quietly backed away, seeking cover behind a nearby wall. Adrenaline surged through me, my senses heightened to the danger unfolding mere feet away. Moments later, police sirens pierced the night, their urgency breaking through the eerie calm outside. Instinctively, I raised my hands as officers streamed past me, rushing into the restaurant with trained precision. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The man now defended himself, his voice a mix of defiance and desperation. I hovered near the entrance, unsure whether I was allowed to leave, my mind racing with what I had witnessed. Minutes stretched into eternity as officers subdued the man and led him away in handcuffs. I offered a brief statement to one of the officers, my words stumbling over the surrealness of the night. Many others had witnessed the altercation, their faces etched with the same mix of shock and relief. I left without a word, the night's events haunting my thoughts as I walked back home. The next morning, passing by that McDonald's, I was struck by its unchanged facade, a stark reminder of life's relentless march forward, indifferent to the horrors witnessed mere hours before.